Accounting 101 Fraud PowerPoint. I am your instructor for financial accounting, Ann Hendricks. I developed this PowerPoint for new Native American federal grantees. It was part of a grant workshop that was funded by the Department of Justice and Bureau of Justice Administration. Government grants, as well as general donations to not-for-profit organizations and tribal governments, are made with the intention of funding community programs. The goal of the grantee is to use the money to achieve the program mission. What are the possible deterrents to achieving the program mission? Well, they can begin with the mismanagement of federal grants and donations. This can be intentional or unintentional misuse of funds that can ultimately derail the best intentions of the organization to provide needed services to the community. These problems can be found not only in Indian country, but in every community and every organization. As an example, when I worked for an auditing firm, a colleague found a fraud scheme at a courthouse in the Phoenix area. A court clerk would collect money from people coming to the court to pay their fines. Often they were paid in cash. The clerk took some of the cash payments and put them aside for her own personal use. Over the years, more than $100,000 was stolen in this fraud scheme. After the scheme was identified and the fraudster reported to police, there was a solution found to help minimize the problem. The courthouse installed security cameras to monitor all of the court clerks. This provided a deterrent or an internal control to discourage this type of theft. So what does a fraudster look like? Well, they could be your neighbor, your friend, your work associate, even your boss. What are the conditions that are generally present in an organization when fraud occurs? What we have here are three conditions: pressure, rationalization, and opportunity. I have an example of a fraud scheme perpetrated by a maintenance worker at a Tucson area school district office. He was often alone in the business office when everyone had gone home. He found blank checks that were left out by the accounts payable clerk on her desk. He also found a signature stamp. He used the checks and stamps to write checks to himself and then deposited them in his own personal account. He was able to steal more than $17,000 before the fraud was discovered. The story was reported in the local Tucson newspaper. When this type of fraud occurs, the community loses confidence in the organization. In this case, the worker was under pressure because his wife was in the hospital and he was facing large medical bills. He also was able to rationalize the fraud as he felt he deserved to be paid more. And third, he had an opportunity to commit the fraud because the check stock and signature stamp were left out. Of the three conditions listed in the previous slide, opportunity is the only condition that management can help eliminate. These are common warning signs of fraud. Then how can a business owner or the administration of an organization keep fraud to a minimum? Here are solutions. Develop policies and procedures, and have strong and effective internal controls. Also, a culture of fiscal responsibility in the entire organization. These next 3 slides show examples of policies and procedures. The first one is petty cash and maintaining a petty cash box for an organization. The box should be kept locked and in a locked drawer, and only one person should be primarily responsible for the petty cash. Another example of a policy and procedure is requiring that employees complete travel expense reports after they travel for business. We will discuss this example in greater detail in class. The third policy and procedure example is letting employees know what types of expenses are appropriate and allowable. This payroll advance example, will be discussed further in class. So we have determined that policies and procedures are important for all organizations. Sometimes, rather than developing their own policies and procedures internally in a company or organization, they will instead borrow them from other organizations. Administration should always make sure that the policies and procedures are customized to their own organization, that they are easy to understand, and they are kept current and are culturally relevant. Good policies and procedures will strengthen internal controls. These strong and effective internal controls will also strengthen the following objectives on this slide and the next slide. Here are some of the internal control issues that the policy and procedures are written to avoid. Example 1, inadequate segregation of duties. When one person has control over, for example, receiving, depositing, and reconciling cash accounts, it is often justified because everyone trusts that person. Internal controls do not provide absolute assurance that fraud or errors will not occur. When there is collusion, that is, when multiple people are working together on a fraud, they can circumvent just about any set of controls. How do we know that management's policies and procedures have been followed? In other words, what is the best way to show that the employees have followed policy and that the strong internal controls are in place? Please see the next slide. Another document used to minimize fraud schemes in organizations, governments, not-for-profits, is to have all the employees sign a code of ethics. This shows a strong commitment to fiscal responsibility. It also demonstrates a commitment to the employees, to the community, and to the agency that's granting the funds. Every employee can make a difference and help the organization properly manage their funds and to help meet all of their program goals. The fraud assignment is outlined on the next slide. Be sure to turn in a brief summary based on the requirements of this assignment. The assignment is due by November 7th. Classes always enjoy a lively discussion about fraud cases, so we look forward to hearing yours.